Hello, Mr. Spivey.
Hey, how are you doing, Maud? Can you
I'm
see
good.
me?
How are you?
Good. Let me see if I can. Hey, can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you perfect.
Great, great. I'm
Awesome.
up in I'm up in Charlotte today and getting ready to do my civilian job this tonight. But
Oh,
uh,
that's awesome.
look forward to talking with you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for meeting with me. This is actually really cool timing because my brother is coming home from the Naval Academy like SLE program today. So
Okay.
I've been really in the veteran mood recently. Which is awesome.
Great.
Right. So, I have these meetings recorded, so I can go look back at them,
Okay.
and things. And so I guess just to start out, could you give us a little bio of like your history in the military, and yeah, what you've done?
Well, I started at UT Chattanooga, and then I wound up transferring to the University of Florida and graduated in 1989 in industrial engineering. And I had along the way on my way out, I had met this recruiter. I was going through different recruiters there at Florida for different regular jobs, and then I had this recruiter said, "Hey, you need to go take this. It's called the ASFAB, we call it, which is an acrostic for aviation uh, adaptability testing." Because I was already going to graduate from Florida, and I think I did well enough on it, and I put the application in, and then I wound up going to aviation officer candidate school in 1999, about 3 weeks after I graduated. Out, getting trained by the Marines, and then from there up to Whiting Field in the Suffolk Field that's in outside of Pensacola. Went through flight training. Got selected to fly the anti-submarine plane called the P-3. Went down to Corpus Christi, Texas. Got my wings. We call them wings of gold. Got my wings of gold in Corpus Christi, and then you have to go do some other training. So they sent us out to San Diego, and then up to Cupertino, or it's called really Mountain View, California, which is Silicon Valley back in the day. Learned to fly the P-3 there. About halfway through that, we were going down to Central America. We were going up to Alaska. We were chasing submarines and some other forms of bad actors down in that were doing some bad things down in Latin America. Then they decided to move our entire squadron to Hawaii. So they moved us to Hawaii, lived out there for 2 years, deployed all throughout um, the Arabian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, all throughout Dia Garcia, everything west of Hawaii, from Guam, including Alaska, all the way out to the Arabian Gulf or off the coast of Iraq. Um, and then back again, went back to Jacksonville, Florida, where I didn't really leave. Jacksonville, was an instructor pilot there, got out of the Navy. Then I got on with American Airlines. And about 2 years later, 9/11 occurred. And that set the airline industry back and changed the big equation. A lot of us stayed in to continue to serve. After 9/11. They didn't, of course, that particular group that attacked us on September 11th of 2001 didn't have much of a Navy, so we adapted to a bunch of different missions for several years. I was in and out full time reserve. Then I got recalled to work on what's called the P8 program, P8 Poseidon. And I was part of the team that was able to author the all the training and all the certifications to get it to an initial, we call it initial operating capability. So I worked on that from 2010 to 20, almost 2013, 2014. Then I went to up to Norfolk and started working for a bunch of three-star and four-star admirals in different positions with NATO, with some other team building exercises. Wound up doing a lot of work in the Mediterranean in 2016. Almost going to retire, and the Navy said, "Well, we got this one more job for you." And um, I said, "Really?" And you do have a choice, but you come down to it. You decide, okay, it's a big honor to serve with all the people that you can. So I got promoted to Admiral, made 1 star. They sent me immediately to Naples, Italy, That was in the middle of COVID, so I couldn't really get to Naples very easily. So I wound up having the opportunity to travel all over Africa in 2021, and we were trying to reestablish our relationships with a bunch of we call them maritime partners or the other navies of some of these African nations, including Ghana and Tunisia and Morocco and Kenya. And we don't think of Seychelles, which is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, as an African country, but it's in that realm. But in all those countries, they would bring everybody in. We'd have a chance to build relationships, talk to people. We wanted them to the U.S. to be their preferred partners, somebody they can trust. And the Sixth Fleet motto was we wanted to maintain our logo on our shield was to maintain a power for peace. So through strength, through partnerships, we were able to develop uh, those relationships. It gives us both access to come into their country, to spend money there, to partner with their navies. Did that for 21, 22. In 22, the Russia-Ukraine war started. We did a lot to support that, to try to contain that in Europe, to support our troops and the NATO forces that were surrounding the Ukraine area in the Black Sea. Worked hard on that until they shipped me back to Norfolk, Virginia, at Military Sealift Command. I worked there for 2 years, and the Military Sealift Command is a big operation that has all the logistics. We have over 130 ships, 120 ships. It's not a number. We have over 130 ships that support the fleets worldwide. And so all the logistics, all the oil, the ammunition, we are the surface component for the uh, Air Force and the Army. So we moved the Army all over the place. And then it came down after my time period, about 2024. I decided it was time to go back to civilian life, or so went back to being a pilot with American Airlines. So that's what I'm doing tonight, and I'm now retired officially.
Wow, that is quite the career. That's fantastic. One of the first veterans I actually interviewed, you may know him. His name is Dennis Crow. He was also a P3. He flew the P3 like sub hunters,
Yep.
and so like that I've heard that before, and I remember him talking about it, and like he said he never actually, like shot a submarine or anything, but like the hunting for them and stuff, that was insane. That was really cool. Um, so wow, I bet I was in Malta for my best friend. Her family likes to go on these crazy vacations, and her oldest sister was not able to go, so they took me instead. And so
Awesome.
we were in Malta, kind of like near like northern Africa,
Yep.
and just with like all like the maritime conflicts that are happening right now with like the Houthi rebels and like kind of targeting a lot of like trade that's going through there. That just reminded me. What was it like? How dangerous would you say it was during like the 2021, 2022 kind of being around like the Northern Africa like theater?
That was an interest. That was I'm not going to say the word interesting time because people use that overly. What that means is everybody was kind of unsure. Everybody was dealing with this coronavirus that nobody, you got a portion of people that think it's the flu, a portion of people think it's going to wipe us all out, a portion of people are using it as leverage for many other factors, as a restricting mechanism, maybe for some U.S. diplomacy or U.S. military partnerships. So I don't know how many COVID tests I had during that 21 time frame. You have a COVID test to get on a plane and go overseas, COVID test when you land, COVID test to get out, all those type things. But the key thing was it didn't change we didn't want it to change the relationship. As far as anytime there's uncertainty created, there's an element of I said danger. The real danger became when everybody became unsure and untrusting, and it kind of divided people by different factions, whether it be political or opinion or medical or whatever kind of things it occurred. So people were on edge on airplanes, on edge, different things. As far as the partnerships, that confusion or that when if you have a force or a presence and you have to pull that back, then that creates a vacuum, and in that vacuum nothing really good gets drawn into a vacuum. So when things get drawn into a vacuum, you have more uncertainty. So in places that were really difficult, like Somalia, um, other type things around in the beginning of that time period, you have created all this uncertainty, like kind of like I mentioned on that. When the Russia-Ukraine war started, it was just we were surprised and somewhat pleased. What I mean, what do I mean by that? We were surprised that the Russians were actually going to go in to Ukraine. We know that we had our politicians over there trying to talk them out of it, trying to incentivize them out of it, had the world and NATO, everybody trying to get out of it. But they perceived NATO as moving closer and closer to their doorstep. And so when they came into Ukraine, we didn't know how long or how persistent that was going to go. So that was, of course, a little bit of a dangerous time and uncertainty. And then there are people kind of divide up. And anytime when you divide up, you people take actions that create friction for the other side or difficulties for the other side. And so commerce slows down, moving oil and fuel around is more difficult, and actually getting food supplies to different places, including at sea, becomes more difficult. So those are some of the things that create the uncertainty that makes everybody kind of on edge. And then of course you have in Africa during that time frame. I talk about Africa because it's so exotic, and it's exotic in that um, those countries don't function like the U.S. or like the West or like the really strong-armed established countries, the Japans, even the Chinas. And so there were several times where the leadership of that country or the military actually took over the government, and that happened in a couple of places during the time we were out there. So that instability generates more uncertainty. So you're always trying to fight. That's why those relationships are so relevant and important, because you want your partners to have someone to call that they know and trust at the appropriate level, so that they can. The Navy to Navy is one level, and there are different levels in there. Up to the top, because then you'll see what's in the news media. News media is very effective, but that's how you assure the public, and that's a message you want to send out. But I guess it was dangerous in terms of you know me moving about. I definitely had a lot of security helping me get around places like Mombasa, Kenya, um, and then you take protocols and certain approved uh, hotels or approved flights or approved things like that. And if it's really dangerous, then you have to really evaluate what are you going to gain by going in there, and what do you take in with you. So all those are factors that circulate in the decision making loop for the Navy component, which was headquartered there in Naples. And we supported what's called European Command, and they control every force in the European and African theater. Um, so, a lot to think about there, but I guess it's just trying to bring back certainty and predictability to the region for both commerce, for people, for health, and trying to use the military as a positive force.
Yeah. For Model UN, like last year, I had to do a lot of research on like Sudan and South Sudan
Yeah,
and like how the military just completely took over there. So I know what you mean about just like complete, totalitarian, just like military taking over. To direct us into the next question though, um, so what motivated you to serve your country, and like how has that decision, like that main reason kind of like affected your life and maybe changed a bit, I guess, over the years?
I appreciate that question. When I transferred from UT Chattanooga down to University of Florida, I went from knowing a lot of folks to not knowing too many. And so I was trying to work my way up socially, work my way up, out and into the to that realm. Had one family member there. That family member was a great cousin, but not she wasn't really that connected to a lot of the other things. She's not a reclusive, but just not as well connected in the area, but a great person. So I was home watching, I think, some of the initial oil tanker escorts when we were escorting oil tankers out of the through the Persian Gulf, and that was a little bit motivating. The Top Gun movie, which I didn't really realize, I didn't expect to be a pilot, but the Top Gun movie, the original one in 1986, uh,
Yeah.
was like an awesome experience. And then you don't really think about it until you graduate. You're thinking about, well, I'm going to move back to Nashville or Atlanta or Dallas. I'm going to set up, you kind of think about starting your life and all the things that are, I didn't plan on staying in Florida all these years. And that's what happened is I didn't plan on it. And then after I took that test that I mentioned earlier, it wasn't like I aced it, but I did well on it. And then the Navy had a need and I applied for it. And I said, well, I'm going to come in and I'll be a pilot, but I didn't want to do other jobs. But I was a little bit naive. I said, I'll be an engineer. Well, that's probably more dangerous sometimes than being a pilot because the engineers go ahead of the troops and clear things like mines and build security fix, all these other type things. But then I qualified. I qualified. I got accepted to a pilot slot. You start thinking, oh, I didn't know this was possible. And then, no, is that possible? And then that's what happened. The doors started opening. And then as the doors open, more doors opened. Um, then you wind up getting in with a great group of people in that time frame, um, doing things that are hard, difficult, but also meaningful. And I think you know, I didn't go. My dad was a music minister. I didn't really have the music talent that he did. So I wound up having other type talents in terms of sports, in terms of other things. And so it turns out everything he taught me was very useful, but not in music. I just couldn't compete with him in music.
That's awesome. That's kind of funny. Very different career than your dad. That's interesting. Um,
Yeah.
so this is one of my favorite questions just because it's always kind of fun. Or actually, no, sometimes it's really sad. But is there like a specific memory or just kind of like a core moment that really comes to your mind when you think about your experience in the military?
Well, you don't realize it when you're doing it. When you're flying different missions and you come into, I mean, there's been a lot of pilots that fly into real, very hard situations and just like you would see on television. To my knowledge, I never flew into where flak's coming up or any of those type situations, but you're always ready and available. So some of those missions in the early 2000s, the counter terror or counter drug, not quite the stuff on TV, but definitely chasing submarines and how important that is strategically made a big deal. But in my formative years, I think what kept me in was that people, if you can support and enable your teams and your troops, and you can accomplish greater things. And so that you can, when I say support, not just like, oh, how are you doing? I hope you have a good time. It's not about that. It's about if you empower them, you coordinate them, and they make a difference. And that really makes a difference when some natural disaster hits, like a bunch of hurricanes, or when a all that's training and it kind of builds, and then when a war starts, then you have the relationships to leverage. You have the people that follow you that want to respond and on the reserve side, volunteer, and then you have uh, all your peers that you want to support and help when you can, both at the admiral level and at other levels. And then the harder parts is when you see real problems and you have to go in there and try to fix them. Sometimes you can't always fix them, or sometimes there's friction against that, even though everyone should agree to fix problems. But you get to the bureaucracy of some of the things you see on television. It's true, and you run into those things. But I think that you feel like you make a difference when you're in the right position provincially or the right position militarily or professionally, so that you can so you not just jump in and just do what you think's right, but so you can take the people that are in the bigger picture and put a component or a capability or a capacity meaning that you can sustain extended operations. Capability is that you can do things that someone else can't do, and that when you can put that together when it counts, it really makes a big difference.
Right, yeah. No, I've definitely over the course of, interviewing multiple veterans, like just supporting the people that you're leading and also because there's so much like teamwork is so important because like everyone has to be, it's like a well-oiled machine. Is there a lesson from your time in the military that you think civilians and just like especially young people should learn and just take into their daily lives?
Yeah, we were talking about that today. I just saw some of my Navy friends. We went to a baseball game up in Raleigh, Durham, and it was like not the Braves or the Yankees or anybody, but just the Durham Duels, and we were having fun, laughing at that and going having a good time at those ballparks. So there's about a group four of us up there. One of the guys brought his teenage son, and we were talking about things, and we were, trying to. One of my philosophies, which is actually true, but I learned either through a preacher or through what, or through just life. But everybody has value. Everybody that you go to has value. The hard part is when that person's value may not be applicable to every situation or every project. So you have to find the right people so everybody has value. They may not be able to be applied to or put into the right situation. So you have to find the people to solve the problem you have, and sometimes that's a real skill and it's motivated. And you have to be able to do that so that you're building that teamwork and people can understand when they're applicable and when they're not the right person for that particular job.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of our tennis team just because like depending on what school we're playing or something, and like it's only like 6 girls is the varsity group, which is the ones that win us the points. And that kind of reminds me how like sometimes we'll switch up who's playing where if we know the team that we're playing, just because it's not that like like they're not a good player. It's just that like if this girl can kind of do it like a little bit better and win us the point more like, I don't know, concisely than that then that's good. That just
Yep.
reminds me because like just specific skills and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's interesting. I haven't heard advice like that from any other veteran.
Well, that's good. That's good. You can see it like tennis is a great sport, but you can see it when they talk about some of these like pro sports teams, and you hear the announcers or some of the other people talk about matchups. It's exactly what you're talking about, where you're matching up what are the strengths of this person versus the weakness of another person or an opponent. And that applies in teams of whether you're selling software or building buildings or running marketing or whatever element it is. There are certain people that are really good at some things, but not everyone's good at everything. And finding that right application, hopefully that person agrees to it, but sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. Um So this is the last question, but I guess what has surprised you kind of most about life after service? Um, and I guess how do you think that civilians could benefit from, adopting a military mindset?
um, what, I think what's surprised, I don't have any negative experience about post. I think that you invest a lot. The military, sometimes you don't know, it depends on what level you're at. You don't know if it's a job you're participating in or if it's a job that has you, you know, uh, not locked up, but it has you dominated in your way of thinking. And so that difference of whether you have it or it has you, it that when it comes to where you're free to do to live life, it affords you to develop relationships better, to have conversations outside the military, and not to transition from you're right. Or actually, this is a much better answer. Um, you the military is not your identity; it's your service. Your identity as an American or as a citizen is who you are. I mean, so every person in the military is a U.S. citizen, or well, as a citizen. So it's your identity and how you identify yourself is so key. And it is a transition. I mean, if you only identify as a pilot, then it's not very useful when you're at the dinner table and there's no plane over there, right? Or, or if you just I'm a ship captain. Well, if there's no ship out there because it's the Tennessee River, it's different. So but it's that one-on-one connection that I think is important. How you identify yourself and the value that my experience in the Navy was all consuming. It did have some costs along the way. Um, both from me personally to others to family. All those things have a little bit of a price to pay in terms of and the price is usually time, where you spend your time, or where your time's required. Um, but then where you're where you apply to that is so people in the particularly that I've dealt with. It's particularly in Chattanooga with the folks I've dealt with, and Mickey McCamish and the leadership there, and the Congressman Fleischman and many others have been very open, honest, and the folks at the Medal of Honor Center. um, have given me use of their facilities and supported that. And it's been great to be from Chattanooga. I went to East Ridge High School. Then where you teach Chattanooga, then I was influenced to go down to Gainesville. But you have the opportunity to, I wanted to connect the Navy to the Chattanooga to the Navy as much as remain my connection and identity in Chattanooga, even though sometimes I can't always, live there or always be there full time. Long-winded question. I may have left a little bit on the table there, but I don't. What was the last part of that?
Oh, it's just how do you think civilians could benefit from kind of adopting a military mindset?
Well, I still like that. Going back to everyone has value, but not everybody's applicable to the problem at hand. And I think that people have to remember that freedom has a cost to it, and whether you see it on television or it's not about dying, it's about presence, it's about availability, it's about you're willing to put yourself first. I think a lot of civilians in Chattanooga do put that first, and then a lot of people put themselves first, and it depends on what you're exposed to. It depends on where you grew up. It depends on what you're being taught in college, and you can see that on as you get closer to your college years. You can see that on television and a host of different places. I'll let you make your own determinations on those, but you know, it, people choose their viewpoints.
Right. I like what you said about like that phrase that, freedom comes at a cost. That just reminds me of I did a camp on America's founding like last summer, and we read a lot of the Federalist Papers, and the first Federalist paper just, is Alexander Hamilton. He just talks about how like in order to be free you have to, it's like reflection and choice. So like every new generation, like you have to actively choose to be free.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that just reminded me of what you said. But this is the end of the interview, and thank you so much. This has really been an honor for me to be able to interview you today.
Well, it's great to talk to you, Maud. I think you're so far ahead of where I was when I was a sophomore in high school, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and look forward to talking with you in the future. And if I can ever be of help in any way, let me know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
All
so
right,
much. Have a
all right,
good day.
good night.